Hello, I'm Ed Fuquay, Young Adult Librarian Extraordinaire here at Woonsocket Harris Public Library.
And I'm Miss Gabby from the Children's Department.
We're here for another episode of Book Talking, where we talk about everything under the sun and sometimes books.
Barely.
Yeah, well, we have a book this time. So we've been talking about conspiracy theories and things like that.
Yeah.
And I mentioned last time the importance of doing your research. You don't get taken in by anything that comes along.
Yeah.
But I also realize it's very disingenuous of me to say that because I know how to search and I enjoy searching things. I love research. I'm a librarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love researching things. Not everyone is like that. Plus, people haven't gotten the same training that I did in how to search. In fact,
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, I often search things without even thinking about it. And I've had people ask me, okay, how did you find that? Like for me, it was really easy, but then I do this sort of thing, all day long. I had a class in internet searching in college.
Do they still have classes in that?
Yeah, I think they do. It's probably a very different class now because Google had just been invented when I took the class. That's how old I am. In those days, there were a bunch of different search engines to use.
Yeah.
And today, there's basically Google and Bing.
I don't think anyone uses Bing, so I think...
Yeah, almost no one does. Most of the things I want to say about Google apply to Bing as well, even though I haven't used Bing as much. When Bing first came along and it was really being pushed, I used to run parallel searches in Google and Bing if I had a reference question and see which got better results. And Google got better results almost every time.
Yeah.
Because I wanted quick, accurate information. Bing also searches blog posts and things like that. And
you know, that thing in the computer where you download something and it sends you to a different home screen.
Yeah.
Bing's that that website that comes up instead of Google, but then you try to figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah, it'll try to change your website sometimes. Yeah, very annoying. I do almost all my searching with Google, which is fine. Everybody does it. Google's wonderful. I use it 100 times a day. Google is awesome. It instantly searches hundreds of billions of web pages. The sheer number of web pages out there is mind-boggling.
You said millions?
There are billions.
Oh, billions.
There are hundreds of billions.
Wow.
Yeah, more than we can count. Particularly since we really only access the ones that are in English.
Yeah.
So there's probably a couple billion more that we can't even access because you can't type Chinese or Urdush or something like that. The results that it gives you depend on a lot of things. Google tries to find the web page that uses the word or phrase that you searched for most often. So if that word or phrase appears a dozen times on that page or 100 times on that page, it'll pop up more than a page that mentions it once. Now, if you're looking for a rare or unusual term, that's really good. If you're looking for a common term, then it's not going to be that helpful.
Yeah.
So putting instead of one word, putting in more things in your phrase will always be better. Exactly how Google does its searches, no one knows. It is a secret.
Mystery.
Yeah. We know they rank pages by how often they use your search term. They also rank pages by how popular they are.
Have you ever gone past page maybe 2 or 3?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever gone past maybe page 2.
If I feel like something is out there and Google just isn't bringing it up, I know I probably didn't search well enough, but I'll keep digging deeper and deeper to find what I'm looking for.
I don't have that patience.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes because there are hundreds of billions of web pages out there. It'll promote things that are very popular. It'll promote things that other pages link to because they consider that to be authoritative. To a certain extent, the AI behind the Google search engine will try to read your mind. For instance, if you type in the word weather, it will assume that you want the weather where you are. So it'll check your location and then give you the weather for Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Oh.
Automatically.
So it tries to assume.
Yes, but if you don't want the weather in Woonsocket, Rhode Island,
You have to type in.
yeah, if you're going to take a train somewhere and you want Boston's weather, you need to type in weather Boston. Or more importantly, if you're a little kid who's doing a report on, let's say, how storms are formed, and you type in weather because it's a weather question, right? No, that doesn't help you at all. You can go through hundreds of Google pages trying to find how storms are formed. That would be like a meteorology page, or the way Google is set up, type in how are storms made, or created
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah.
You have to be very specific, or else you're just
Yeah.
gonna get lost in the abyss of Google.
Exactly. The more words you use for your search, the better in general. Searching storm clouds, by the way, I tried that search before I made that as my example. Searching in storm clouds actually gives you almost immediately some really good hits on how storm clouds are created. Spelling matters when you search. And sometimes that's important, and sometimes it isn't.
That's my biggest problem.
Yes, I'm not a very good speller either. The thing is, Google wants to be helpful. That friendly AI of theirs, if you misspell something, it will try to guess what word you meant.
Or be like, did you mean this?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it really, really wants to search under like the term that you didn't type.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's automatically run that search ahead of time, so you click on it, the search is already finished. But sometimes you really meant to say exactly that word the way you spelled it. I've sometimes searched for the wrong thing just because Google replaced the word that I slightly misspelled with a
Yeah.
completely different word that gave me a totally different search. I've been researching Polynesian gods for my other series that I do with Miss Solitaire. And some of the Polynesian gods are so rare and obscure, you can find almost no information about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it frequently would try to change around what results it was giving me, because you couldn't have meant that word, because that's like a 6-syllable Polynesian word. No one searches for that word. You must have meant this. No, Google, I meant this, which is, the name of Maui's grandmother, So Google wants to be helpful. It wants to answer your question. It just often doesn't know what the question is.
Yeah. But you can't lie. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
Especially when like you're in a rush and you just type and then you like misspell. Great.
Yeah, if you can type in a sentence to Google.
Mm-hmm.
Like you type in how are storm clouds formed. That will also give you good results. Different results than just typing in storm clouds, but also good results. Google won't search for a or the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't bother typing in a or the in your search. Also, the word and is assumed. It's a Boolean search, so when you type in 3 or 4 words, it assumes there's an and between them.
I never knew that.
Yep.
I'm trying to be as specific as heck when I'm
Yeah.
doing my things.
You usually don't have to make full sentences, although little kids often do, and it often works for them.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go to all that trouble. Now, if you have an exact phrase you want to search, you can put quotation marks around it.
Okay.
And it'll give you every website that has that exact phrase.
That's very helpful. for
It
the
is
next semester.
extremely helpful, yeah. If it has to be the exact quote.
Okay.
Anything you put between the quotation marks has to be found exactly on that page.
Then do you have to like quote it too with like the author or something or not?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
just any search, any phrase that you know is out there on the internet and you want results of it. You can use the quotation marks around it. You can also use a negative sign or a dash, really, if you don't want pages that have those words.
Wow.
If you're doing a search for something, like if I wanted like the best like Batman stories, but I didn't want anything from Batman the Animated Series, I didn't want the cartoon, you can type in like best Batman adventures and then negative animated, and nothing but the cartoon will pop up. No web page that mentions that cartoon will appear on your list.
That's really cool. I never knew that.
It's very useful, but it doesn't always work. Here's a great pro tip. These things I'm telling you won't always work.
Oh.
Google does have an AI, so it'll sometimes interpret things in ways you don't expect. I told you Polynesian mythology. Now, did you see Moana?
Yes.
Okay. There's a character in Moana named Maui, who is a Polynesian demigod. He's very famous all over the world, all around the Pacific Rim. There's also a Hawaiian island named Maui.
Is there actually?
Yes, spelled the same way, although with different accent marks. So if I were Polynesian, I'd pronounce the 2 names differently, but I'm not Polynesian. So when you type in Maui, it automatically gives you Hawaii. Hundreds of pages of Hawaii. So obviously that wasn't enough. So I typed in Maui, negative or not island or not Hawaii. I tried both of them, and they still gave me hits from Hawaii. It just couldn't believe I was really searching for the Polynesian demigod, because so many people would rather read pages about Hawaii. I discovered organic coffee grown in Maui pages came up on the top of my list. So I had to type in Maui mythology, and that got me hundreds of web pages to the Polynesian demigod Maui.
That's cool.
Which I feel I should have gotten by using the negative sign, but Google literally wouldn't let me.
It's like, I don't really think you're doing this. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Now, also be aware, Google keeps track of your searches, and that will affect your results. It affects them in ways that Google won't admit because their programming is proprietary, meaning they own it. It's copyrighted.
Yeah.
The Google search engine is owned by Google, and no one really knows what it is. It's all secret. So the questions that you type in, it will remember, and that will skew your results for future questions.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is if you searched and found one web page, and you do a similar search the next day, it'll assume you want that web page again. It'll come up at the top, the one you saw the day before, which can be very useful.
That's cool.
What it also means is that, like my wife and I will sit at home and each have a computer up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, honey, do a search for this, and she'll do a search, but she'll get totally different results than I did.
Yeah.
She's done so much, on her webpage that's different from mine.
Mm-hmm.
If you brought out your phone right now and did a search, I did a search on my phone, we'd get different results.
Yeah.
No question about it. But usually not that different.
It's just like little tweaks here and there.
It'll push things to the top of the things you really want to read. Google's always trying to deduce what you really want to read. Now, Google also sells ad space.
Yes.
Now, Google swears up and down that the ads they sell do not influence the search results, that no business can make themselves higher in the search results by giving Google money. What they can do, though, is put their advertising right on a search.
Yeah, they'll say, because is that why that they're
Yeah.
always like the top things?
Yeah, if you search for like pizza, which I did not do this search, I'm just using this, I'm making this up. It's quite possible like Domino's will come up at the top of your search, but it'll have a little thing next to it that says ad.
Yeah.
The first 2 or 3 things that look like Google hits are actually ads. If you really wanted local pizza, then Domino's is a good thing to click on. But if you didn't want that,
Yeah.
they'll also come up with like things on the side of a Google search will often be local businesses, on the assumption that that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Like if I type in the word Ponderosa, I may be searching for the ranch that the Cartwright family lived on in the 1960s television series Bonanza, because that's a search I'm likely to do. But it'll actually give you the steakhouse called Ponderosa.
Oh, that was a good restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have a very hard time unless you type in Ponderosa Bonanza, and you'll get sketches and photographs of the house the mansion they lived in. So it's always trying to guess, and it doesn't always guess correctly. One of the things that also is about Google is it can be tricked. You can fool Google. Google won't really admit this, and there's tricks that I've learned over the years that may actually have been blocked by Google now. Like the best trick is if you really super want your web page to come up, if you have like a podcast on a certain topic, you could take the name of that topic or the name of your podcast, and you could type it into the background of your web page, but make it the same color as the background color. So if you had a black background with white letters, you would type the word of the name of your podcast or your subject in black letters against a black background. So it's absolutely invisible.
Yeah.
Someone coming to the page couldn't read it, but Google never reads its pages.
Yeah.
No one at Google ever reads a web page during the search result. For one thing, the search results are virtually instantaneous, and that's because all the time, 24 hours a day, probably more if they could, Google has bots searching the web, reading web pages. But a bot can't read a web page. A bot looks at it electronically.
Yeah.
It only sees the dots and dashes that make up that page. It reads the HTML of that page. So if you write one word against a background, the same color as the background, it's invisible to the naked eye, but the bot will read that word as appearing 1,000 times.
Wow.
And that will give results to your page that shoot to the top. I read a thing one time written by a guy who worked for the government of Orange County, California. And Orange County wanted to be at the top of every Google search. Every time you typed in Orange County, they wanted their county website to be the very top of the list.
Yeah.
And that was his job. He was their webmaster.
Wow.
So he would kind of every morning grab his coffee and type in Orange County and expected to see his web page first, and one day he didn't. Another web page came up ahead of him, and it was from Texas.
What happened?
Well, he searched through and tried to figure out what the difference was, and he finally realized this is a web page for the state of Texas. that, among other things, had links to the web pages of every other county in Texas. So the word county was used 50 or 60 times. And Texas also grows some oranges. Although oranges only appeared a few times on the Texas webpage, county appeared like 100 times. So Google skewed its search toward the words county rather than the word orange. So Orange County wound up second rather than first. So you immediately had to go back in and beat the number of times county was used by using the background trick, which he succeeded at because the next day when he did the search, it was back on top again.
That must be the most stressful job ever.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But trying to spoof and beat the Google search engine is a professional job for some people. Also, one of the cool things that I never actually used very much while I was researching this is a reverse image search. Do you know how to do that?
No. Oh, yes.
Yes. You go into Google Images and you click the little camera icon in the search bar.
And you can this is a good one I saw on catfish.
Yeah.
Like when they think someone's getting catfish, they take the picture, put it there.
You put it there, yeah, and you can see if that picture ever popped up anywhere on the internet.
Yeah.
You'll look at instantaneous search of images. That can be so useful.
I've done it before.
There's a lot of people that use stock photos. They say it's a picture of themselves, but it's really a stock photo.
I've done it for school before too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was like this big thing where someone was trying to like plagiarize like a paper, and our teacher was like, okay, look up these pictures. So we looked up like the pictures of it, and apparently it wasn't like the actual person. It was for like a research paper.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wanted a picture one time to use as a background. That shot from Avengers Endgame of all the female Avengers. It's a really gorgeous scene. Before it was released on DVD, I wanted that as the backdrop for my computer.
Yeah.
But every version I found of that image was from the trailer for the movie, and it was all low quality. I couldn't find a high def version anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you blow it up to the size of your screen, of course, it becomes a blurry mess. And so I used that. I found a good image that was too small to use, and I did reverse image search to find all the web pages that use that image. And I found one that had a high def one that they had already blown up to wallpaper size.
Nice.
So that was pretty useful.
Very helpful.
Yes. So the things you type into Google do affect your search. If you're looking for information, you'll get the most popular pages. If you search like UFOs, you're going to get pages that tell you all about UFOs and support them. You'll have a hard time to find pages that are skeptical of UFOs.
Yeah.
There was something that my wife emailed me about. She sends me like articles to read. And one of them was an article on not a new dental technique, but something called orthotropics.
Yeah.
It's kind of complicated. I'm going to go into the whole thing here. But it's a method that will fix teeth without braces.
Oh, you told me about that.
Yeah. However, I read the article, and the article is hugely popular with this technique is totally popular with the incel movement, which right away made me very suspicious. And the guy interviewed in the article was a real orthodontist, and he certainly seemed like he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about teeth or orthodontics, so I started searching, and I eventually found. I did my search. All I got was things repeating what the guy said in his interview. I found his web page. I found the web page of his society in England, the organization he founded in America. So I finally typed in the word orthotropics and pseudoscience. And that got me skeptical web pages. And I immediately found a web page from the American Society of Orthodontists where they discussed it. And while they admitted there was something to his theory, the fact is it's completely unproven. He's never successfully done it.
Yeah. And didn't you say like the only pictures he had, they were like very like skeptical too?
Yeah, he would do this technique to kids when they're like 9 and 10 years old, and then he shows pictures of them when they're 13 or 14. When you go through puberty, your face really does change, and there's no evidence whatsoever that it's actually his technique that's improving their looks. So by adding pseudoscience to my search, I got things that were skeptical. If you put in if you read about some place that's haunted, and you put in haunting of such and such, skeptic.
Yeah.
It'll give you people who are critical of the haunting, rather than ghost hunters that are pushing it. All right. So if you're doing a search, you type in something. Virtually anything you type in will have a Wikipedia page.
Everything has a Wikipedia.
Everything has a Wikipedia page. There's an infinite number of them. So the question I get all the time is, because kids come in doing research, is sometimes the teachers will say, don't use a Wikipedia page. And I tell them why she's probably saying that, or he or she is saying that, because that can be a very good thing. So is Wikipedia good or bad? And the answer to that is yes and no. Wikipedia is often good for general knowledge.
Yeah.
Wikipedia should be the start of your search and not the finish.
No.
You can't write a whole paper for school on Wikipedia on almost any topic. The problem is Wikipedia is random. Wikipedia is literally an encyclopedia written by people with a lot of free time on their hands who do nothing but write and edit articles.
I know, and anyone.
Yeah, anyone can do it.
Anyone.
Sometimes they're professionals, the absolute tops in the field. You get hugely authoritative articles on things, and sometimes they're ridiculous. Sometimes they're flat out wrong. Sometimes they're pure propaganda. Pages of politicians often get re-edited to either say bad things about the person's character, or someone on his campaign staff will go in and say good things about him. There was a case several years ago involving the Church of Scientology. I'm not sure how much you know about them. They're a church located in California. They have a pretty bad reputation, although they're extremely popular with a lot of Hollywood types, which is why they're so famous. They're really rich, really influential, and the Wikipedia page attempted to give what they thought was a unbiased view of their past.
Yeah.
They were created by a science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
But the people at Scientology thought that was actually kind of an attack on them. So Scientologists, and there are millions of them around the world, went in to re-edit the pages. And they re-edited them to such an extent that Wikipedia thought the article was no longer authoritative. They went back and re-edited it. And this became an editing war that went on for a long time. Every time an editor of Wikipedia would change a page back, some Scientologists would go in and change the page to what they wanted it to say. Until eventually the Church of Scientology and its members are all banned from editing Wikipedia.
Is that really? You can get to a point where you can ban it?
Yes, you can be banned from editing. They can't ban you from reading it, but you can be banned from editing it.
Wow.
So anyone's allowed to edit Wikipedia except Scientologists. Now, if you're using Wikipedia and you want more information, the best thing to do is first look at the box at the top of the page. Have you seen that box that pops up sometimes? It can have really useful information. Like I was on one the other day that said, this page contains biased material. In other words, the page is so bad, Wikipedia has noticed it's not very good.
They're letting you know.
Yeah, so go ahead and read it. And just be aware Wikipedia itself doesn't like that page and it's asking for someone more authoritative to edit it.
Yeah.
And then if you find information you like in the Wikipedia article, there'll often be footnotes. If you go to the bottom of the Wikipedia page, it'll give you the sources of where those things came from. And there's a quote from someone, there's a small number next to it. You go down to that footnote and click on it, and you'll see where it comes from. If you're researching something that's in the news and they quote like a newspaper article, you'll have a link to the article down below, assuming it's online. And you can go right to it and read the full quote in context. And the sources online that were used to create the Wikipedia page, the person who wrote that page will often put those sources at the bottom as well, usually with links. So Wikipedia can be good, but don't trust it, don't depend on it, and certainly don't try to write an entire paper based on it.
No, it's not a good idea.
Yeah. So if you want information out there, medical information is super important.
Okay.
Everybody, if you look things up on the internet.
God. Did you know that I have type 4 diabetes apparently, and I'm supposed to be dead by now?
Yeah. Medical information online is, for the most part, really terrible.
So bad. You type in a minor thing, and they say that the world's ending, you're dying.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they want hits, so by doing things that scare you, they get more hits. The internet is all about clicks. A lot of them sell advertising space, and so they want you to click on them as often as possible. So putting scary things, in their title or in the description of the page will get more clicks. There are sites you can go to that are neutral. I searched for the last week or so, trying to find neutral sources of information for people. Now, when I go to do a medical search, I almost always go to one site that I've been using for years, just because when I was in library school, I did the same research to find a good medical site. And the one I found from so many years ago is still a valid website today, and that's the Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
It's a functioning hospital. The website is run by actual doctors.
Oh, okay.
And they try to give you the same advice they'd give you if you were sitting in front of them, in their office. It's very straightforward. MayoClinic.com. It's very good, very authoritative. There's also one called Medline. That's good.
Okay.
Medline is also done very professionally, and the National Institute of Health runs its own website.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the problem is a lot of the national medical things are under a lot of political pressure. So unfortunately these days, some of the websites you can't always trust.
Yeah.
There would have been a time when I would have said, go to CDC, the Center of Disease Control, because they almost always have the best information about things. They've been leading the crusade against anti-vaxxers for years. They have very good web pages on that. But the CDC is under a lot of political pressure from various people to change their opinions about certain things.
Yeah.
And so while I like to say you could trust the CDC, I'm not that sure anymore. However, the most used website isn't any of the ones that I listed. Naturally, it's not the one anyone goes to.
Okay.
The most used website is WebMD. If you've done a medical search, I'll bet WebMD has popped up and you've probably used it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. I've gone there too. It's not a horrible website at all. They don't lie to you and they don't generally try to panic you. They do try to list every possible thing your problem could be. If you type in headache, the first thing that comes up is brain tumor. Because that can cause headaches. Sure it can. So can stress. So can a billion other things. Take it with a grain of salt. There's almost nothing on there that's completely dead, flat, wrong. But they will sometimes emphasize things that really aren't that important to you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things don't have context. They give you facts without saying what that means.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you things, and what they do is they take articles in medical journals and try to simplify them for the common person. So in a sense, they dumb them down.
Yeah.
And while everyone wants knowledge presented in a straightforward way, when you dumb down medical information, it can sometimes sound very different than it does when a doctor is actually explaining something to you.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, WebMD takes advertising.
Oh, it does?
And the advertising is all from places that sell like medicine and medical supplies and things like that. If you're the kind of person who's very suspicious of big pharma,
Yeah.
No one's actually found a case where WebMD lied about something because they were an advertiser,
Mm-hmm.
but the mere fact that they take advertising, and the three are listed at the top, Mayo Clinic, Medline, the National Institute of Health, don't take advertising. Right away, that makes them a little more authoritative.
Yeah. Because when you get advertising, doesn't that mean that you get money off the people too?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, so if you're looking for good news sources, because everything is news these days, everything is so important. Unfortunately, most people get their news from Facebook. Facebook is not a news source.
No, it's not.
You can read an article on Facebook, but it's usually something that's been posted by your friend, and you're certainly not getting both sides of an issue. And can you trust it? There's so many places out there that are like completely BS. I said last time to go online and check news sites and things like that to see what they say.
Yeah.
Some news sites are completely untrustworthy. Some of them are actually dangerous. They repeat things that have gotten people killed. I found a really cool chart online that I'll try to link to when this goes up, of different news sources. It's a pyramid. The ones at the top are the best in the middle. And it goes down in increasing usefulness. The ones on the far right and the far left, yeah, don't go near those.
Far right and far left?
Yeah.
So we're looking at the one in
The ones at the top and the middle are the best.
Okay.
And they're websites that I've gone to for years. The one at the very top is Associated Press,
Okay.
also known as AP.
Yes.
AP has been in business since 1846.
Okay.
They covered the Lincoln assassination. They got 53 Pulitzer Prizes. This is the news source that reporters use, is AP.
Yeah.
I used to intern in a television station, and we had the AP wire, which is a teletype machine. You've probably never seen a teletype machine. Yeah. It's this big metal box that sits there on a desk in the middle of the newsroom. And whenever there's a breaking story, it types it out. There's this clunk, 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 and this long brown sheet of paper rolls out with a version of the story.
Yeah.
And so if it's a really dull news day, they'll go to AP to see if anything's happening anywhere else in the world that they can cover.
Mhm.
Because I was an intern there during when the local news was on the air, so I got to watch them assembling the local news every day. I was also there the day the AP bell went off. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden there's this bell starts ringing, like a school bell, and everybody freezes what they're doing. They stop, like, you know, while putting food in their mouth, and they drop what they're doing, and they race to the AP wire. And so we get there, and it's coming out this long brown piece of paper, and it says, President Reagan has been shot.
Oh my God.
So, you know, the director of the evening news, like, yanked it off, and so they debated whether they should go on the air with this. And the producer said, no, it's not enough information.
Yeah.
Now, in today's world, in a 24-hour news cycle, you'd run with it instantly.
Oh yeah, even if there's nothing.
So we decided to wait till there was at least a second AP report as to how bad the shooting was.
Mhm.
But then, as it turns out, ABC took over the feed before then.
Aw.
Because while we're waiting for the second AP thing to come along, we got the red light that ABC was taking over our feed. And so the producer said, forget it, we can go home now. Network news has
Aw.
it.
That's sad.
Well, you know, I'm glad we didn't run with it because we didn't have nearly enough information. We did the right thing, and we all know we did the right thing, and ABC News covered it for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
He lived, it turned out.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So that's AP. There's also Reuters. Reuters has extremely strict journalistic standards.
Yeah.
If you work for Reuters, you are held to an extremely high standards. They wrote a book on journalism, and that is a textbook in journalism classes.
Oh my.
Yes, we had the Reuters book when I was in journalism school. Yeah, they're like the cream of the crop. There's also a lot of other ones up there. AFP is AFP and BBC. AFP is a French news network, and BBC is British. Both of them have really good international coverage. If you want stuff that happens somewhere else in the world, American news isn't always the best place to go. The American news networks, they don't always have reporters in the field covering things like that. But BBC in particular and AFP also do. Plus, if they're covering American news, you heard the phrase they use down south, that they don't have a dog in that fight?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not an American news company. Something happens in America, they take a distance view of it rather than a, you know, oh my God, this is happening right now in my country news.
Yeah.
So they tend to take a more abstract view of things, which makes them more objective.
Mhm.
Objectivity is the goal of all of these places.
On the list, CNN's right in the middle. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's basically average.
Okay.
They don't go in either direction, liberal or conservative, but they're also not as well vetted.
Yeah.
If they had someone cross-checking and double-checking everything they did, like Reuters does, they'd be nearer the top.
Mhm.
They're not bad. However, if something comes out from AP, Reuters, or BBC, you can guarantee it's been looked over by a dozen different people.
Mhm.
CNN will run with things, you
Without
know,
being looked over.
yeah, without being looked over.
Okay.
But they're on the air all the time, and they want to be the first ones with the news. They pride themselves on that, but
Yeah.
because of that, they don't rank higher on the list. There's a website called Bloomberg. Bloomberg is the place to go for business news.
Okay.
If you're curious about whether our recession will turn into a depression or not, Bloomberg looks at dollars and cents. That's all they care about. They only care about politics because of the way it affects the stock market.
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal is kind of the same way. Wall Street Journal is a newspaper, first of all. They do have a web presence.
Mhm.
But they skew slightly towards the right wing because it's a newspaper for rich people who own a lot of stock. So they tend to be kind of right wing. However, they distinctly separate their news side from the editorial side.
Mhm.
Editorial side will always be conservative. The news side tries to be, you know, just the facts. You can usually count on them for trends in the market and stuff that's happening in the world.
Yeah.
Anywhere currency and that kind of thing going on in the world tends to be that way. And everything is ranked down on like that slope.
Yeah. There's definitely things that I've watched or like, you know, I've seen,
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy because they're all the ones that are going downhill.
Yeah. Now, if you go to Google's
Yes.
webpage, and you search Google News, a
Mhm.
news page will come up.
Mhm.
Now, the ones at the top will be the top news stories of the day. If any of them look interesting, you can click on them for more information. Google News is not a news source. It is a aggregate.
Yeah.
They gather together news from all these different news agencies. So if there's a big story going on, you can click on it and you can get AP, you can get NBC, you can get Reuters' take on it, all right next to each other. And other things that might be less trustworthy on the same list. So you can choose which ones you want to read, and you can go into different news articles and compare and contrast how different people discuss the exact same issue. That's very useful. So further down the page, you also have a thing called My News,
Yes.
which is based on things that Google knows that you've searched. Like a couple of days ago when I was on Google News, the top story of the day was the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. However, My News, the top story was man runs Dungeons & Dragons game for 38 years. Because I'd searched Dungeons & Dragons many more times than I had searched Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
So it assumed I had no interest in the Supreme Court whatsoever, and it just wants to feed me stories about Dungeons & Dragons. So it's not that useful. If you want to look at all sides of an issue, and these days, unfortunately, you have to.
Yeah.
And our issues that we're dealing with are so complicated. There's places you can go that will give different viewpoints on things. There's a website called allsides.com. Allsides.com will deliberately take a right-wing news source, a left-wing news source, and a centrist news source,
Yes.
and put them all together on one page. You can literally read them all side by side.
That's cool.
If there's a riot somewhere, they'll have the left-wing viewpoint that's probably in favor of it, the right-wing viewpoint that's against it, and a middle ground viewpoint that may just be information, raw information that you can use.
It gives three sides of it.
Three sides to every issue.
Wow.
Yeah. How much that useful it is for you, I don't know. And you have to trust their decisions on whether a news source is right-wing or left-wing. But they have a page telling you how they came to that decision,
Yeah.
how they choose their sources. There's another one called factcheck.org.
Yes.
If you think that sounds really fishy to me that politician said that, a fact check will double check and do the research on pretty much everything people say in public. There's also a website called Checkology, which I'm not mentioning higher on the list because I just found out about it.
Yeah.
It's designed for students and teachers to analyze news stories.
Okay.
Checkology is specifically designed for teachers who assign someone like you to write a news story on current events. You go to Checkology, you sign in, and it gives you an overview of news sources and things like that to use.
Nice. Cool.
One thing I go to a lot is Snopes.com. Do you ever use that?
No.
Snopes is brilliant. Just go there someday. Type in Snopes.com.
Yeah.
It started out double checking urban legends, but now it does pretty much everything because we live in an age of urban legends.
Yeah.
Half the things people say are urban legends or conspiracy theories. So Snopes checks out whether something is factual, whether something is not factual. Some stories, in this day and age, some stories are partly true. There was a news story the other day that Kamala Harris wishes good luck to a rapist. Well, it actually happened. The guy that was shot, and whose name escapes me right now, he was shot in the back in a police shooting of a African American. He did in fact have a rape charge against him.
Okay.
He was not convicted of rape, so legally he is not a rapist.
Okay.
However, he was injured in a police shootout in which he was unarmed.
Yes.
So she wished him luck on his recovery.
Uh-huh.
Not good luck with those, legal charges that are about to be slapped on you. So you could say the news story was true, but it was slanted in a way to make Kamala Harris look bad. And that was slanted very deliberately.
Yeah.
A really good thing is, a really good tip, don't trust headlines.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, headlines are trying to get clicks. The writer who writes the news story may be really good, but he doesn't pick his own headline. In the old days, a writer would write something on a manual typewriter and, pull it out and hand the paper to his editor, who would go over it immediately, and they'll probably decide on what the headline is right there.
Yeah.
And they'll send it down to a copy boy to get it set up for the evening news. And the writer will pick the photographer if the story has a picture. These days, the writer writes it, hits the send button on his computer.
Yeah.
It goes to someone, somewhere in the world. He probably knows his editor in an overall sense, but whoever's on the desk that day because the 24-hour news cycle, you're not always going to get the head of editing in charge. Is going to put that story on the internet. And some editor in the process, and the process lasts a few minutes, will pick that headline. The reporter has no way of knowing what the headline is going to say. And they will also pick a picture for it, probably from their picture archives, unless there's a specific photograph of this event happening.
Yeah.
You know, if Donald Trump says or does something, they might actually have a photograph of him at the press conference where he says that. But they can use any photo of Donald Trump from the last couple of years, and it would work for most articles, and they know that.
Yeah.
They'll sometimes have a computer pick the picture. They have an algorithm that picks the picture based on keywords in the article. So it'll sometimes misread an article, much like Google, and pick wildly inappropriate pictures. I've seen that happen on news sources.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There's a plane that was nicknamed the Albatross that crashed.
Yeah.
And it's years ago. But when it ran on the internet, they had a picture of the actual bird, not a plane crash.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Their computer deduced it was about a wildlife.
Yeah.
Because they used the word albatross so many times in the article. Okay, how do you feel about this?
I think it's cool. I think I'm learning about things I've never known before.
I don't want to make this like school. I want this to be fun, but I feel like you should have been taught this in school.
Oh no, definitely.
This is
But
so important.
There's so many things that you said within the first 10 minutes of us even doing
Yeah.
this that I would never even know.
People take news for granted because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
TikTok is not a news source. Instagram is not a news source. People coming to life or death decisions, whether to wear a mask or not, based on a meme. I mean, that's just insane. I hate the fact that we're living in a world where you have to research these things.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, people have always lied to you since the dawn of time. And now when they lie to you, you have a way of checking that.
Yeah.
You can go online and check it yourself, but it takes work. And unfortunately, being a citizen of a republic in the 21st century, it's our job to be informed. Our government, our survival literally depends on it. So you have to do the research. You have to do the hard work. And sometimes it is hard work. And some things are hard to deduce on the internet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah, like I said, people are dying every day because of literal misinformation they got off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very sad. All right, we'll have more next week. Probably we'll actually talk about conspiracy theories, which is how we started, you remember.
Yes.
All this is building up to conspiracy theories, see?
Yeah, I know.
It all ties together,
Oh.
yeah. It's all linked.
We might be going off topic a little bit, but it all just comes back to the end.
Yeah, it's like your favorite conspiracy theories next time.
Yes.
Until then, I've been Ed.
And I was Miss Gabby.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.